Hello, everyone. Thanks for staying tuned for Skeptic Haven. We have a great show on Secular Soapbox. We're going to be discussing sexual oppression and trauma as it relates to religious indoctrination. And we have a pretty good panel of guests here to discuss that with us, including Damien from the Tall, Friendly Atheist Dad podcast. We've got Courageous from Skeptic Haven. And we also have TikToker Alex, who goes by Sickness of Thickness. So a diverse panel. Tonight's panel was intentionally diverse because whether we are male, female, non-binary, gay, straight, bi, pan, trans, or other, many of us have been affected by sexual oppression in some way, oftentimes caused by religion or our own religious upbringing. And we wanted to share some of these unique views and perspectives with a diverse panel. So thank you guys for watching. Please hit the like button and subscribe to Skeptic Haven if not subscribed already. We look forward to bringing you a great discussion.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I am Bryce Aroni, and I'm here with my dude fellow, my guy, Caleb. What's up, Caleb?
My man, I'm doing very well, actually. Thank you.
Dude, I'm glad to hear it.
How you doing? I'm gonna interrupt you. Yeah, I never ask.
So I'm
throw
doing
you off
good.
Your rhythm a little bit. Say it
I'm
again.
sorry. I'm doing good. Hopefully we are in sync for the rest of the show. But you looking forward to tonight's discussion on sexual oppression and religion?
I look forward to all our discussions, but absolutely, this one as well as the rest.
I'm sure you probably you didn't have too much to prepare for the show, but I'm sure you can share your perspective as a cis, straightish majority male, and what it was like growing up religious, and your perspective on sex and sexuality, or how that may have affected you as an adult. And like I said, we have a kind of a diverse panel here who's going to talk about that from different angles. So I should start off by asking, are you comfortable with the subject matter? I think I know your answer, but
Oh yeah, I'm an open book.
Thought so. Well, you're not alone. We also have our producer, Karayah, also known as Cray or Courageous, or she has a lot of names, but that girl Cray, you know what I'm talking about? Pronouns are she or they. Cray, welcome to Secular Soapbox. How you doing?
I am good. I'm excited to be here tonight. I don't think I've been on the show yet.
You have not. Yeah, actually,
No.
we've spoken before.
Thanks for having me
on this particular show. So welcome to Secular Soapbox for the first time, and welcome to Skeptic Haven as, our rebranded name. But someone else who is here for the first time, but not the first time because he's been here before, is Damien, the tall, friendly atheist dad.
That is I. Good
Pronouns
morning.
are he, him. How you doing, Damien?
I'm fine. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. You happen to be
yes.
in a part of the world where it is bright and sunny morning.
Yes, no, it's not sunny. It's It's raining outside.
Oh, I apologize.
But it is morning. It is morning.
It is morning.
I will give you that.
There you go. And rounding out our panel is Alex. Pronouns are they, them. Alex is a TikToker. I don't know why I keep tripping over that word. A TikToker who also goes by Sickness of the Thickness. And Alex has shared and presumably will share some of their traumatic experiences related to religious indoctrination. And you also have a perspective on modern Satanism, pansexuality, non-binarism.
I'm a very well-rounded person.
You are a wealth of knowledge that you are going to impart here for some of us for the first time. So welcome to Secular Soapbox. And this is your first appearance as well, isn't it?
Yes, my very first appearance. I've never talked to anyone here except Courageous.
There you go. Well, we are very friendly here. We have strong opinions, but it's always from a secular perspective. And welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
And by the way, thanks to everybody in the stream. I expect a very lively interaction and conversation. And yeah, make sure you guys are liking it and subscribing if you haven't already. So we were planning on having Dr. Daryl Ray here with us as one of our resident experts in psychosexuality. He has not been able to make it as far along, but who knows? Maybe he'll pop in later. That would be great. If not, we would love to see his follow-up on the things discussed on this show. But okay, so like, where would I want to start? Oh, you've got a cat.
Oh yeah. So this is Red Loaf.
I think I knew your cat's name.
He is more loved on my TikTok than I am, which is
He's chunky.
great. There he goes. Yeah, he has his own hashtag that has 50,000 views. So
Nice.
shit hurts.
We may
Wow.
see an
have to look
appearance
that up.
by my orange cat later, because I have one as well. She's running around here somewhere. But I might as well start with you, since you are the resident first timer on Secular Soapbox. What religion did you? I presume that you've come out of a religion, that you've deconverted and are no longer in a religion.
Yeah, so it's Christianity for sure.
Okay.
However, for me, it's really hard to pin down the type of Christianity for the sole fact that I am a missionary kid.
Oh,
So there's another thing.
your parents were missionaries?
My mom was. I'm also adopted too, so there's that.
Oh, okay. Are they still religious?
Well-rounded knowledge.
There's so many
Very-
layers to the thickness onion.
That's
I hate
awesome,
to
though.
feel that.
I have-
Alex, what church were you in? What church were you raised in?
Or did she ever identify her denomination?
So I will say most likely she is fundamentalist, because that is mostly on what I was raised, fundamentalist evangelicalism.
Right.
However, we church top a lot because one, she went on mission trips a lot when I was younger. And I don't know if y'all want to search this up, but the organization she works for is called Go to Nations. It is the most colonizing religious bullshit I've had the displeasure of being raised around.
Well, it's right there in the title. Go to nation.
Yeah.
Doesn't get clearer than that.
Yeah, no, it really doesn't. And the website's just really cult vibe
Wow.
that I can get into later because I was raised around it, and that has controlled a lot of my upbringing.
How large is this organization?
Oh,
Or
Lord.
if you're aware.
It's very large. So their home office is down in Florida, but I know they sponsor hundreds of missionaries. They also help train missionaries. And then they have like different offices around the world as well.
Wow.
So they're definitely global. I'm just not sure how much of it is global.
It sounds very culty, though.
Oh yeah, they're planning on going off the grid within the next couple of years.
Planning on doing what?
Sorry?
Going off the grid, becoming fully self-sufficient on their own plot of land.
Okay. Yeah, so that's definitely.
So, like,
Yeah.
definitely they're trying to build a religious cult, like little
they have a
commune.
bunker?
Jim Jones.
Yeah, pretty much. So that
No Kool-Aid. No Kool-Aid is allowed in that.
Do you mind if I
Listen.
ask how long you've been disassociated with that organization?
2 going on 3 years now. So
Okay, so
more
fairly
recent
recently.
than I would be considered a baby atheist, baby Satanist, all that fun stuff.
And what was it that got you out of it, or how did you find your way out?
A large part of it was my husband. He definitely like opened my eyes a lot. And then part of it was when you're a missionary kid, you're forced to read the Bible a lot, like in depth a lot. Like I had to learn some Hebrew a lot.
Oh, wow.
I've forgotten all of it by now, but like it was there. And once I hit like I was like 11 or 12, I read like from 12 to 14, give or take. I read the Bible completely through probably 10 times, if not more. Like straight
What was your
front-
childhood?
Oh yeah, it was fun. my mom thought I wasn't doing it because I was also because trauma that I'll get into later, I guess.
Yeah.
But like I was actually reading it, and once you read it that many times, you're just like, wait, what's this? Wait,
So
huh?
it didn't make sense to you.
No, it really didn't make sense to me, especially as a kid being told how loving this God was, that was so much death, genocide, like slavery, and I was just like, I'm not okay with that, even at that age where I wasn't fully able to comprehend like how bad it was and like just the history behind like any of it. I was still like, this doesn't sound like what I grew up with. This doesn't sound like what I was told. And so from like 14 to 16, I was completely questioning. And then I met my husband, and he was just like, yeah, no, it's all bullshit. Because he was an atheist when we started dating.
Mm.
And fun fact about that, my mom made him prove that his family was Christian before he was allowed to date me.
Yeah.
He took a picture and showed her a crucifix that was hanging in his house because his grandfather was Catholic.
Like that's
And,
so
and
weird.
was that allowed? Alex, was that allowed? Like, even though they were Catholic, like an evangelical family?
Surprisingly, it was allowed, and the only reason it was allowed was because my mom had one friend who was also my second grade teacher who was Catholic.
Wow.
That was literally the
Wow.
only reason.
So I noticed that you identify as non-binary.
Mhm.
When did you discover that? Was it before or after your deconversion from religion?
Yes. So
All right, show's over. Let's go.
Not an option.
so when I was still Christian, I knew that I was like non-binary. I knew I was trans, not necessarily non-binary because I didn't have the word for it yet, but I knew I was trans. I just didn't fully feel the other gender. However, and I knew I was queer as well, but for me, it was definitely more of a safety thing. I suppressed it. I had a lot of internal transphobia and homophobia as well,
Mhm.
because of one, how I was raised, and at that time I was also facing a lot of abuse because not to get so heavy so fast. Oh my.
Well, yeah, and you
I
can
remember,
save some of
yeah,
that for later. You don't have to go into all of that right
yeah.
now.
I'm
But
like,
I was
I'm
just
just.
curious if it was before or after. So it sounds like
It was a little bit of both, to be honest. I found like the word for it, and I felt more open and accepted after I had got kicked out, and was on my own and with my husband. After a little bit, I was just more comfortable with it. But I knew before that I wasn't cisgender, that I wasn't straight, that I wasn't all of that. I just, as trauma response, as survival mode, I couldn't think about it.
Okay. Let me come back to you because I do want to go around the room. Karayah, or courageous as you are today. Sometimes you're cray cray. You identify as she/they. So, and I've heard you use both pronouns before. So, talk to us a little bit about that, and if you have a preference, what it is, and how you identify.
So that's actually been a lot of what I've been figuring out over the past couple of weeks because I think that I'm non-binary. But like that is something that I have been trying to figure out as part of my deconstruction because the feminine pronouns don't bother me because I am very feminine presenting, but it's never really felt right. I've never fully felt comfortable in my skin or the way that I describe it is that like because I am feminine presenting, I've always identified as a woman, but as a bad one. Like and there's something about being feminine that I just inherently don't get. And so I've been like exploring that more. And so like if people call me female pronouns, it doesn't bother me. But like just even within the past 2 weeks, I have come to the realization that I am also non-binary.
Interesting. And so that was but I suspect there was probably, and I think you may have alluded to that earlier, that's kind of always been in the back of your mind growing up. It wasn't just, you didn't just realize 2 weeks ago this doesn't feel right. It sounds like it was an experience from youth, or you'd been experiencing it from youth.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, there's just certain things that like and I guess like my process is a little different because, you know, I became an atheist at 29. I was deconstructing for probably about um 5 years before then. But once I accepted I was an atheist and I completely left church, then I started really looking at a bunch of things within myself that I've been confused about. So over the past 2 years, I've discovered that I am bisexual, that I am on the ace spectrum, because I've discovered that I am demisexual as well. And then this third part has been about discovering that I am also non binary.
What
If
is
only we learned about
demisexual?
these things when we were younger, right?
I know.
So,
what
go ahead,
is
Caleb.
demisexual? I've never heard this one.
Great question.
Or this one. Maybe that sounds weird to say that way. I've never heard.
No.
This.
It's definitely it's because when I heard it, I was like, what does that even
It's
mean?
definitely a lot more niche.
It's at least the way that I understand it is that so when someone is asexual, they don't experience sexual attraction. So they can experience other types of attraction. You can experience like romantic attraction. You can experience like physical attraction. It's just not sexual but the thing is that with demi people, that once they've established a really strong emotional bond with someone, that then they can start experiencing sexual attraction. And until they have that bond, that attraction, it's just not even there.
Is that dissimilar to pansexuality?
Yes.
Yes.
So I can explain that. That is what I am. Pansexuality is technically under the bispectrum.
Mhm.
However, it is attraction to someone regardless of gender.
Right.
Gender essentially is not a factor for us when choosing a romantic sexual partner.
Mhm.
We still have our standards, but it's not based on gender. Yeah.
And I could probably unpack that more too, because I identify as bisexual, and sometimes people have asked me, well, what's the difference between bisexual and pansexual? And
That was something I had to learn too.
yeah, but it's for me, I guess it's clear because I know what I am and not attracted to. There are certain things I look for, and we are going to get to talk to Dr. Daryl Ray in a moment. But you know, with respect to males and masculine identifying people, I am attracted to masculine presenting males, and I'm attracted to feminine presenting females, and that's kind of the binary nature of my sexual attraction. I guess that's trinary. I'm not really sure what it is, but there are other people who are attracted to transgender, who non-binary, non-presenting, all, you know, and that doesn't quite fit me. Go ahead.
The way that I always thought bisexual means was that it meant you were attracted to two genders, but what it talks about is two different types of attraction.
Yeah.
So you're attracted to your own gender and other genders.
Yeah.
And so pansexuality is on the spectrum of bisexuality. So not all people who are bisexual are pan,
Right.
but you know, so it's.
Well, was
it's
he
a
referring to
spectrum.
different genders? Because what I mean is like, he said he's specifically interested in masculine men as opposed to femboys or effeminate men or flamboyant, however you want to. I honestly don't know the proper.
We know what you mean.
Okay.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah.
But are we considering these two different types of genders as well? Is
No.
that what
Not
I
necessarily, but
That's his preference per gender. He has a preference for masculine men over effeminate men. And for women, he has a preference for more feminine women than masculine women. They're not separate genders; they're just preferences within the bisexual preference, if that makes sense.
And we have I never know how to pronounce the first part of his name, so I'm just going to say Jesus.
Jesus.
Bi is being attracted to the gender traits. Pan is not based on gender at all, and I think that's kind of piggybacking off what we said. I do want to get Dr. Daryl Ray in here. Dr. Ray is an organizational psychologist and an author who focuses on topics such as workplace, organizational culture, secular sexuality, and the treatment of religious-induced trauma. So Dr. Daryl Ray, welcome back to Secular Soapbox, and welcome to the first time on since we've rebranded to Skeptic Haven. How you doing?
Well, very good, Bryce. Glad to be back on. Sorry, I totally got the times mixed up with another podcast I'm supposed to be on tomorrow. So
It's all good.
I cut it way too close. My mistake.
You made it, and your pronouns are he, him, I believe.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, no, we were just talking. I was just kind of going around the room trying to get a sense of everybody's perspective, having grown up in religion, and what their perspective was on sexuality. Cray, you were just talking about how you recognize the queer aspect about yourself, or the non-binary aspect. You were in religion at the time, and so presumably you would not be able to express that to anyone at that time.
Yeah, I just figured that like I was wrong. Like that was I was like, okay, so like there's something that other women get that I just don't inherently get, and if I just try harder, someday I will figure out what I like. Someday it will. I'll figure it out, and it will start to feel right. Like
Wow.
was
So
like,
let me ask Damien, our tall, friendly atheist dad.
Yes, your resident expert from Australia.
Resident expert from down under.
Down under, mate.
You are obviously cisgender male, pronouns
Yep.
he, him.
Yep.
You grew up in religion, but deconverted at some time.
No, not quite. No, I was a teenage convert.
Oh, so you didn't grow up in it. You found your way
No.
into it and then found
Yes.
your way out.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I guess that
yes,
is
so
a little different. So
it is, yes, and that kind of does, I suppose, in my way, colours an experience, because I was essentially an atheist up until about, I think, 14 or 15.
Mm-hmm.
Then I spent about 20 years as a Christian, and probably half of those in some sort of quasi-evangelical fundamentalism.
Wow. Now, this is interesting to me. So you didn't grow up with the baggage of religious oppression. What
No.
was your perspective on sexuality in your youth? Was it something that was just like freely accepted?
Pre-conversion or post-conversion?
I'm going to ask you about both, but I want to know about the pre-conversion right now. Like, how were you raised? Were you raised in a conservative family that hindered sexual exploration? Or
Well,
were they very
look,
liberal?
I grew up in the 1980s, and the 1980s were a lot more darker. I don't want to say the words on a live stream, but there's certain pejoratives that we would freely use.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can. Everyone can guess what they were.
I'm sure I've been called all of them.
Exactly. Yes. And it was more acceptable to make jokes and to assault people based on your dislike for their sexuality. Mm-hmm. And that, and there was still that closet that you were expected to be in.
Right. So, so now that's on regarding the LGBTQ people, but just what about sexuality in general? Like, did you ever feel any pressure to like wait before marriage or wait until marriage, or was there pressure the other way to like deflower somebody? Like, what was that experience like for you?
There was that high school bravado where you were the cool kid if you had sex last night with one of the with the girl in year 10 or year 11 or something. There was always there was always that. I think the more pressing thing is that like there was some social pressure to have sex or to be attractive or to be seen as available or willing or stuff like that. From the parental side, I think that my parents were more liberal about it, in that don't get your girlfriend pregnant was the like do it safely, don't get a disease, don't get pregnant.
Okay, so yeah, the standard stuff that responsible parents probably would be saying anywhere.
Yeah.
So okay, now that's interesting. So then you found God, or you found a book that told you there was a God. And
something like that. Yes.
What did your perspective on sexuality change when you started reading it? And if
pretty much. I went basically from 0 to 100. In that gay people were affected by sin, affected by Satan. They were, I think the term flaming homosexual was thrown around. Like there were, like if especially in my church, like if a gay person came to our church, like we'd care for them, but they are dirty sinners and there is a deeper problem with them.
Wow. Okay.
So I spent a lot of time in that environment. And in a way, I'm still, like, it took me a long time, especially after my deconversion, to be comfortable with homosexual people.
Wow.
So, look, I'm perfectly fine with them now, but just it took a long time.
And were you fine with them before?
I would accept them, but I wouldn't necessarily enter into a friendship with them.
Kind of standoffish.
Because there was that baggage that, well, hold on, it's sort of like the old saying of being in the world but not friends with the world.
Right.
Something like that.
I got you. Okay.
And so once I dropped the religious baggage, it just took that time to work out that, gay people are people too. They need love. They need respect, just like anyone. And
amazing when you're like, but they're actually people.
But they're actually people, yes.
Well, it's got to be weird when you realize you don't really have a good reason anymore for hating gay people. Like if that was your only reason for being against them.
What was basically because God hated them. So and you're a good Christian if you hate what God hates.
Yeah.
That was it. And so so it took a close friendship with a guy named Mark, who was he just trying to explain, he was like the first like really close gay friend that I had, and he kind of explained some of the stuff that he went through and some of the struggles that he and just like watching the tears on his face and the emotion in his voice, and it really hits home that I used to be part of that culture.
The part of the culture that harmed him.
Yes.
Okay.
That made him feel less than human because of, the gender of the person that he was in a relationship with.
Yeah. Okay. Now, my co-host Caleb, we've already introduced him as a cis straight guy, but you grew up in religion, and you were actually raised in religion. And what were your thoughts or impressions of? I'll ask you about sexuality in general. Were you raised in a conservative environment where sex before marriage was a sin and you have to wait till marriage, or like how was that experience?
I will say that for as fundamentalist as they were and as strict as they were, my parents and my step-parents both, they had a more realistic approach. They were a bit more pragmatic. They had all lived through the 60s and 70s and had lived some really wild childhoods. And so they had perspective already about what it's kind of like to be wild out there. And
so they were realistic. They
were pretty realistic about it. So they would preach it. Absolutely, very fire and brimstone that you should not do this. But if you are going to do it, here's a condom. And they would literally give us condoms still. But then they would just turn around. It was very bizarre. It's hard to explain.
I got a personal question to ask you, and you can deny answering if you want. But how old were you when you lost your virginity?
15.
Okay. How did you feel after? Did you feel any like guilt or remorse or religious pressure afterwards, or was it just like?
Oh man,
nope.
To the moon.
Give us details, Caleb. Give us details.
Oh man, it was in a jacuzzi.
Was it a jacuzzi?
That's we don't need any more than that.
It was warm.
Thank you. So
that's hot.
Great.
Yeah. So you didn't have the
bubbles were flowing up.
The negative aspects of religion.
Do we have to swap sex stories? Because I don't have any.
No, I didn't really even. Maybe it's my fault for asking.
It's just it'd be really nice if you did.
So I did the partial Christian thing, and I did it when the night I got engaged.
You did okay. It
was partial Christian and partial. We had already been talking about it, and horny teenagers. We were just like, fuck it.
let me get Dr. Ray in here because I'm sure you have heard all about this, and we'll talk about it from both angles. The normal sort of no sex before marriage, religious pressure that parents put on children and demonizing all kinds of sex, and also from the LGBTQ perspective. But what is your perspective on how religion affects people emotionally and psychologically with respect to their sexual identity?
Well, most patriarchal religions fuck people's sex lives up pretty bad. So that's the short answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So wait, men are the problem. Okay, done.
Well, not supposed to men, but the worship of men.
I think men are victimized by it a lot, not as much as women, generally speaking. And patriarchy is oppressive to all people. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, and actually, just in the ways that it adversely affects men, causes more negative effects onto women, right? Because if men are raised with this idea that it's women are supposed to dress a certain way and behave a certain way, and they're supposed to be virginal, but it's okay for you to go out there and do whatever, but you don't want a girl who's known for doing that. I mean, it just
which is essentially purity culture,
quality alpha male type bullshit.
Yeah.
It is so toxic to teach a guy that by touching a woman you devalue her.
Oh, the flower.
Go ahead, Dr. Ray.
Well, I was just going to say, I wrote an article a couple years back and published it in American Atheist magazine. It's called Male Shame, the other side of female shame. And I don't think you can separate the shame that women feel versus the shame that men feel. They are expressed in different ways. But I think a tremendous amount of the sexual abuse within relationships comes from male shame. And men being taught that if they don't control their women, they're not real men. So when the woman expresses some level of independence, the man gets offended. It's a story we see all the time in Islam. I mean, we see honor killings, men killing women because women expressed independence. But we're not that far separated from honor killings in the West. It was 200 years ago. Women still were burned at the stake, or there were honor killings in some parts of Christianity. Go back 400 years, and there sure were. So we need to keep in mind that that's what religion does to people. While we're not killing people, some people aren't. Some men are killing women. I mean, women are by far the biggest victims of domestic violence.
The number one cause of death for pregnant people are their partners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's
one cause.
So why are men doing that? I hypothesize. I propose that it's because they were taught some pretty bad ideas that come straight from patriarchal religion about who women are, what men should do, and what's their relationship to women and their own sexuality. If a man feels inadequate, he may take that inadequate feeling out on his partner. So
you see this commonly when with the murder of transgender women, who are unfortunately, it's even worse in the Black community. Black trans women have the worst time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that the fact that a lot of these men interpret it as an attack on their sexuality. Yeah, it's terrible. You mentioned the popularity of it in Islam a few moments ago, and we actually had a question in the chat from Free X. It was a badly worded question, and I think he was asking whether or not there was a channel for ex-Muslims and apostates of other faiths. I don't know. I assume that there are. I believe that there is a podcaster and a YouTuber whose name is Apostate Aladdin.
Apostate Aladdin, Infidel Noodle.
Yeah. So definitely check those out. And also, we dabble there a little bit too. We don't specifically talk about Christianity all the time. It's recovering from all religion. as Dr. Ray is quite familiar with. It's not just Christianity you deal with, is it?
If you come to recoveringfromreligion.org and hit the chat button, talk to one of our agents, they will be able to direct you to our very private secret Slack. It's not on Facebook. Nobody can get to it unless you're admitted by us. And we have a ex-Muslim channel just for people like you.
There you go.
So, yeah, you can
there's
come
another one. Yeah, the friendly.
Talk to several other people that are ex-Muslims and dealing. We have a regular caller that comes from, I believe, Morocco, and he's a trans man from Morocco, who's in danger of his life if he comes out, and plus he's an atheist on top of that. So that's pretty. All those cards are stacked against him.
So I do want to get back to Alex because I know you started going in this direction before, but I kind of wanted to let it settle and marinate. But we're talking about the religious influences on our psychosexual development, and a lot of times that comes with trauma. And you were talking about how you were a victim of that growing up in what sounds like possibly a cult. I mean, I don't know why I'm trying to dance around that. What you described as a cult, but we didn't give the name of it, so I guess that makes it okay.
Capitalistic cult.
Yeah, but did you want to elaborate on that? You said I heard you say you waited until basically the night of your wedding to, to have sex. So,
so I'm trying to figure out where to start with this. So Karayah says I already heard some of this before because I've mentioned it on I forgot her username. A Sandwich. That's her name. A Sandwich's YouTube channel.
Yeah. Or Tax the Churches.
Yeah, I was on her YouTube last week, I think. But essentially growing up, I was abused a good amount by my brother and sister and neglected by my mom, because my mom is a single mother as well as a missionary as well as a full-time worker, and she was white. My siblings were fully African American and I'm mixed, so that in and of itself caused a lot of strain.
Are they older than you?
My sister's a year older than me. My brother's about a year younger than me.
Okay. Well,
so we all grew up as children together, but they absolutely hate my guts.
They hate you now as well?
Oh yeah, they still hate me. They despise me. And a lot of it is because we grew up very evangelical, and apparently I give off very queer vibes. So even when I thought I was cis and straight, I gave off queer vibes, which wasn't good for me.
Now, but you said that they abused you, and so are we talking like physical, verbal? Okay,
verbally, psychologically, physically. It was very well rounded.
And they still identify as whatever sect of Christianity that is.
I think so, but I haven't really talked to either of them in 2 years, because I'm going no contact with them for the rest of my life because I don't feel.
What a great way to convince people how Christian you are and how you're in the morally correct religion by abusing them, right?
Yeah,
it's quite effective.
A lot of it started out emotional, psychological, just verbal abuse, things that hurt very often. Psychological in the fact that they manipulated and exploited fears of mine to the point where I now have a very bad phobia of cockroaches because of them.
I don't particularly care for them, but
I didn't care for them when I was younger. I didn't like them. It was ew, that's gross, get that away from me. Now it's I will run the other direction screaming. Don't put me in the same room as them.
Gotcha. So yeah, you've literally developed a phobia.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called. Roach phobia. I'm sure there's a proper name for it.
Full-on phobia, because they would put roaches in my bed, live, dead, rubber. They would put them in my shoes. They would.
Now, were they doing this because were these just their emotional reactions to get at you, or were they trying to tell you something? Were they trying to convince you to do something?
Part of it was emotional reactions. They both do have some mental disabilities. which definitely affects like the way they live. Part of it was to tell me something. Part of it was because I'm mixed, they believed I was my mom's favorite, because I was lighter skinned. Our mom's white and they're fully African American.
Okay.
However, in actuality, they got the full amount of our mom's attention because of their disabilities. I was seen as the good child, the
one who
kid
didn't need anything, probably.
the one who didn't need anything, the easy one. So I was all my needs and stuff were constantly pushed to the side so that she could take them to the doctor's appointment, so that she could stop their meltdown, so that she could get them whatever they needed, that kind of thing.
Do you have any kind of relationship with her now? Your mom?
Yeah, unfortunately. So like it was really easy, like not talking to my siblings. Like it was very easy to just cut them off, block their numbers, etc. For my mom though, it's a lot harder. Like and like I know deep down that the relationship I have with her will always end up hurting me. It's just hard to take that next step to fully cut her off. I don't talk to her very often, but I haven't completely cut her off like I have my siblings.
So, but it sounds like she hasn't cut you off though. Like, does she still want a relationship with you?
I don't know. That's the thing. It's hard for me. So because of like her like focusing more on my brother and sister growing up, she didn't really know me. She didn't know me.
I presume she knows your gender identity and queer identity, or does she?
She knows now. She basically compared it to my sister's essentially pedophilia and my brother's criminal and abusive actions.
So she's calling you basically having a mental disorder.
And more or less, yeah.
And a perversion. Like being a pedophile is harming children. Like
well, it can be. It can be. If you're a pedophile who acts on your pedophilia, then it is harming children.
She is 20 years old, still in high school. She has a mentality of like an elementary schooler. Like mentally, that is what she is capable of. She likes dating freshmen.
Can I ask, do you feel disowned by your mum?
I kind of, yeah, I got kicked out at 17 at the beginning of all of COVID. So a little bit.
How old are you?
I'm 20.
Oh, yeah, you are really young still. So, okay.
Well,
so yeah, I call that being
our baby.
just to put some technical terms, if you're a pedophile has the attraction, but a pederast is the person who acts on the attraction.
Right.
So, you know, whoever actually acts on it, the technical term is pederast. I see the word pedophile being thrown around all the time, and I think we need to, because everybody has attractions that could get them in trouble to some degree. Not everybody, but many of us do.
The reason I think this is important is because pedophilia is a mental disorder, and it's one that unfortunately is not treatable right now that we know of, because there's no ability to study it. There's very few people who would ever come out to say that they are a pedophile without facing any kind of, you know, you're not going to be able to study this naturally, because it's a very stigmatized thing to be, even if they've never done anything to any child ever. Just the fact that they have the attraction, they're going to be in the closet about it. So how do you even study that?
Most of the people who do act on their attraction are in jail as well.
Right. Those are called child molesters. Yes. And they should be in jail, but that doesn't mean.
I wish most of them were in jail.
Yeah, well, child molest. If anyone who, let me rephrase it. Most of them have gone to jail. Some of them have gotten out and are,
and some
and
are
a lot
protected by the
does not
church.
get reported or convicted. My friend would literally on prayer requests for years being like, my stepdad molested me for years. Every single Sunday would write it, and no one ever read her prayer request.
You know, speaking, I don't mean to turn this back to religion, but since we're talking about pedophilia and pederasty in particular, this is something that is rampant in the church. And I guess the church doesn't really mean anything. I'm using all inclusive here. Churches, Catholic, Protestant, I'm sure.
So purity culture normalizes pedophilia, because if what you are wanting is a woman who doesn't have any experience and cannot gauge it, you are wanting a childlike person.
Yeah.
And you are wanting to be able to
you more want a sex
your
slave
wife
than anything else, rather than...
Yeah. No, like that's what they want. So one of the things that I'll talk about is that the entire Bible, when it was written, they never imagined women would read it. Like at the time, women were just like a notch above cattle and property. And I'm a writer. I write for fun. And there's like, as of writing right now, I never anticipate that, you know, a horse is going to be able to read it. Like I would love
maybe that's your new market.
You know,
maybe
like
horse books for horses.
Right. You know, like, but that's just not something that's in my reality. And unfortunately, that's what women were for them. The entire Bible is written through a male gaze, because that's,
I mean, the reality is most of the people who were around when the Bible was first put pen to paper were illiterate anyway, right? There was very few people who could read in those days, but the few who could were all men, I'm sure. There probably weren't too many. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh no, just like the other thing is that it creates where like all nudity is sexual, which is not like,
we learned that in Genesis 3, right? Adam and Eve, they discovered that they were nude when they ate of the tree of knowledge.
So like you'll see moms that like where they've got like 2-year-old little girls that are playing, and they'll be like, hey girls, like be modest, and telling them to like pull down their skirt, or like, you know, getting onto their kids because they're running around naked. And it's like, if you see a 2-year-old's naked body, like there shouldn't be anything inherently sexual about it. It's just a body. But in purity culture, it's not just a body, it's a sexual.
You know what's strange to me is growing up in the United States and in New York. I grew up in the 80s as well, the early 80s. And I remember nudity not being a big deal if you were under a certain age. Like kids, like I remember running around naked, and it wasn't like a big deal up until a certain age. Like once you're like schoolyard, you know, school age, then you have to wear clothes.
Was it for both boys and girls though?
Maybe it was just boys.
Yeah, boys could run around naked, it didn't matter. Girls, no.
Why? Yeah, that is strange.
It is actually interesting you say that, because like a guy can walk topless down the street, you know, and he's almost seen as like macho, and as like
what's the opposite when you're grown? Yeah.
Whereas if a woman walks topless down the street, oh my god, outrage! Think of the children.
Let's not talk about a woman breastfeeding in public, even if she's clothed and covered.
Yep.
But I guess I was gonna say, I remember it being the case like that when I was a child, but I don't think it's still that way. And maybe Caleb can speak to this because he's quite a bit younger than me. I think that now you can't even, like, my mom had this baby book of me where there's naked pictures of me as a child, but I don't think they do that today. And I think that's viewed as like pedophilia today. So what was your experience growing up, Caleb, with nudity? Was it always like
damn near identical? Honestly, I was out on the end of the boat. We used to go tubing out on the lake. Like when you had to pee, I just over the edge of the boat. Like nobody cared. You know. Then we got a whole lake full of other tubers and skiers. Nobody cared. It was if you went out in the yard and did it, nobody cared. Again, as Courageous mentioned, I was a boy. I don't ever remember seeing a girl do this ever. Come to think of it, anywhere. In fact, when the women had a car emergency in the middle of nowhere, it was a big deal because we had to like really determine are we really gonna stop just so she can pee on the side of the road? Like it was a really big decision every time something like that came up. But when it was one of the boys, it was more or less like, are we really gonna inconvenience ourselves with this? It wasn't as big of an issue.
Yeah.
Let me throw in a little historical piece that I was taught by my father to always wear an undershirt or a shirt that covered my nipples. He was taught that, and his father was taught that.
Was he military?
Well, he was in the military, but that's not where he learned it.
Okay.
Here's the deal. If you go back and look at pictures from the 1900s, 1920s, 1930s, men working in the most dirty, sweaty, hot places still had shirts on. Places where today we would say, hey, why don't you just take your shirt off? That was not men covering their nipples was a thing in the 1920s, as late as the 1930s.
It's like that in the Middle East too. That's considered nudity for like, I remember being deployed, speaking of the military, at the place I was deployed to, we couldn't just, even if you were a guy, you couldn't wear, your shorts had to be of a certain length, your shirts had to have sleeves, you couldn't have a sleeveless shirt, and you certainly had to be wearing a shirt. And so otherwise they considered it offensive. And so their standards of nudity were way more strict than ours, but it does appear to be a generational shift. Every so often the culture changes, and it seems like it was more pure at one point and then less pure, and then now it's kind of getting that way again.
I live in Kansas where it can be 110 degrees in the middle of summer. You look at pictures of quote pioneers in the 1880s, they got men have long sleeve shirts on. It's just a change in the culture.
Yeah.
And anyway, I didn't mean to sidetrack. It's just interesting to see those kind of changes.
Just from the younger sorry.
Oh no, it's so interesting how things change, and then like the mindsets of like, even what we were talking about earlier of like, because like, of course, like purity culture hurts everyone. Like it hurts guys, it hurts men being taught that essentially like, but it also like, because I feel like I went to a fairly progressive church, and so I have not gone through a lot of what a lot of the fundamental women went through, but it's still taught even in like very progressive circles. It's still taught. And so like growing up, I just never felt safe around men. I never felt safe around boys. I never felt safe around men. I didn't start developing friendships with guys until I started deconstructing. And it's because like you're just taught that ultimately deep down, like if you didn't wear the right thing or like present yourself in a right way, that these men have these like crazy rabid animals inside of them.
Women always have to adjust their behavior to conform to what men are doing, right? You have to dress a certain way, otherwise men might rape you, but it'll be your fault.
Well, you also taught that like you have to watch, Karayah, what you wear so you don't implant lustful thoughts in other men.
Yeah, so I remember being 15 and I had a tank top that my mom had bought me. And it probably came down maybe a little bit further than, but like I developed pretty early as a girl. Like I remember someone at church asking my mom if I was real, and my mom was like, "You think I took my 13-year-old to go get plastic surgery? Like what?" Wow. And
who asked her that?
Somebody at church?
Someone at church came up and asked my mom. One of the college kids came up and asked her.
That also ties into, I think, the general oppression in modern fundamentalism, because in my fundamentalist church, I was told to watch what I said and what I did.
Hold that thought for a second, Damien. Wes, go ahead and pull up Otangelo's comment. We'll talk about it, and then we'll so that we can just dismiss it and get out of the way, because I think what Damien's about to say is going to touch on that. We have a character in the chat who we're not going to give too much attention to, but we want to be fair.
He hangs around.
We want to be fair, and Otangelo's comment is that Christ's command is not about oppressing others, but about loving each other. What are atheists even talking about? Okay, Damien, go ahead and complete your example.
No worries. Thank you for cutting me off midstream.
The thing is, we're not concerned with. I know I'm cutting you off, but I'm gonna. This is important because I don't give a shit what you think Christ commands. I care about what Christians do. Oppression isn't about what you tell me this command is. It's about what you actually do to other people. So. And that's the last we're going to say about that. But go ahead and elaborate there, Damien.
No, that's all right. No, thanks. I'm waiting for a third time for you to cut me off, but that's all right.
Well,
so I was told numerous times to watch what I said, what I did, what music I listened to, what TV shows I watched, because I would cause the other members to stumble. I would cause the other members to lose their connection with Christ. All that kind of stuff. So I think that the behavioral control I felt was just the non-sexualized version of what something like Alex or Karayah or any other woman who grew up in that evangelical culture would have felt.
Yeah, and that's a form of oppression, by the way. It's a form of oppression to you because your behavior is being controlled by others in the church so that you don't adversely affect other people.
It doesn't matter how much they love you or how much they proclaim it as they're literally throwing rocks at you until you die.
Yeah, we don't need that kind of love.
No, not dead. Yeah. They don't throw rocks till you're dead, just till you feel the pain and want to change your behavior.
Yeah, I don't.
But a lot of it was guilt shaming though, because if you're the person who caused that church member to not come to church anymore, then that's on you because you caused someone to stumble in Christ.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, like, I remember being 15 years old and I was wearing a tank top that my mom had bought me. And after church, my dad told me that, or sorry, not my dad, my mom told me that I wasn't able to wear that tank top at church anymore. And I said, okay, why? And she said, well, Teresa, so one of the women at the church, she came up to me and she said that her husband struggles with pornography and that you are that is triggering it. And so I couldn't wear it anymore. And like, I've talked with both of my parents about this yet, since, and I'm like, so you realize this was an adult man and I was a 15-year-old. Like, why was the reaction that I shouldn't be able to wear that top and not stay the fuck away from my kid? Sorry, we're trying to curse less. I'm sorry, but
We're trying not doing very well. But...
Yeah, no, we're not doing very good. I think I'm guilty of it as well. But...
Are we not supposed? Are we not supposed to curse on this podcast?
Too late. Too late now.
I think we're heading into that direction, so we don't get demonetized.
I try to keep it down, but
okay.
We're work in progress.
It's all about the money.
We're work in progress.
Okay, I did not realize I was crossing a boundary there. So okay.
It wasn't a very well defined.
You can say whatever you want.
Hey, I have a saying that I think our friend, the guy that's made that comment a little bit earlier, and I totally agree with you, Bryce. I don't care what you say. I want to see what you do. But my feeling is religion Christianity is the religion of peace. Christianity is the religion of love, as Islam is the religion of peace.
Okay, I was gonna say that Christianity is definitely not a religion of peace. The words attributed to Christ himself. I did not come to bring peace. I came to bring
I thought you said that Christianity is a penis at first, and I was like,
well, that too.
Keep it to yourself, please.
Christianity is
one at that.
Christianity is the religion of love, while Islam is the religion of peace. That says it all right there.
Yeah. And we know that both of those are
bullshit.
Well, not all. That's false. For anyone who is wondering, Alex, you posted in a private chat the actual link to the.
I figured it'd be a great thing to show.
I mean, I'm gonna let producer Wes kind of decide that. We may put that in the chat. We're definitely not soliciting anybody, but if you're curious about the cult, I guess we're calling it, that Alex grew up in, Wes, you can go ahead and put that in the chat. And did you want to talk a little bit more about that? I mean, I know you talked about your own personal experience, but I'm assuming you're not you can't be the only one who is adversely affected by this. Did you know any other kids that were?
So I haven't really gotten in contact with the kids that I knew growing up, just because all of us were missionary kids. We saw each other probably once every 3-4 years for their get together thing at the headquarters.
Wow.
Get together / training type thing that they had, just to touch base with everyone that was there. So I haven't really had the chance to find anyone else who I knew growing up who was there, unfortunately. But I do know one thing that was particularly traumatizing for me that they made all the kids do, so I know it can't just be me, is that they like speaking in tongues.
Okay, so a charismatic Pentecostalism-ish type offshoot cult.
ish, yeah, it's something like that. And so that was a big thing for them. So, and I'm pretty sure this contributed a lot to my social anxiety. They would make us kids go up there and like in front of hundreds of people.
Mhm.
And we could not leave or move lest we get in trouble until we were filled with the Holy Spirit of God and his words just shot out of our mouth and we were speaking to someone, had to touch someone's heart.
So how did you accomplish this?
I faked it.
Okay, you faked just like everybody. You did what everyone else did and faked it.
Yeah. So like I have never felt comfortable speaking in tongues. It always made me so uncomfortable, and I especially hated doing it in front of people
because you knew you were lying.
I knew I was lying, which led to feeling really guilty about it. And then there was also like it was also feeling like I wasn't enough, that I was doing something wrong. And then there's also the fact that because of how I grew up, I was always used to not being in front of everyone. I was always used to being over to the side. So being put in front of everyone constantly to do this thing that I faked, that I lied about, that I...
Did you ever ask any of them if they were really doing it or if they were really feeling it?
There was one guy I grew up with that was faking it as well.
Okay.
I completely forgot his name, but I knew his family were missionaries in Africa. They were white, by the way.
13 the first time I heard someone speak tongues, and it was another kid that was about my age, and she like came over and like hugged my shoulder, and it was like she was hissing or something, like she was trying to speak parcel tongue or something. Like it was so fucking weird. It was so weird. And I'm sorry, Kat, I'm gonna work on it, I promise. But it was so weird. And then like later people like, hey, I'm worship right now, leave me alone.
Yes. Tongues. And he thought it was actually of the effect. He was very adamant about
different denomination. Yeah. What was the Southern Baptist or evangelical?
Evangelical.
Okay.
Assembly of God Church type.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And my stepmother was Baptist, and she is now. I don't know if Baptist speaking tongues, but when I was growing up, she was very into this speaking in tongues stuff. And it wasn't actually until she had a crisis, speaking of this sexual conflict with religion, when she found out that her daughter was gay, and she went through years of both of them did, but actually my stepmother, to her credit, I mean, she was really struggling with trying to maintain this relationship because there was so much dissonance and internal conflict, and it was a really hard time for her. As much as she wanted to have a relationship with her daughter, she felt she morally couldn't. But long story short, at the end of the day, now she's a different kind of Christian. Mm-hmm. And I haven't heard her speak in tongues in years. So, but point is she was very, very much into the tongues thing, and she tried not nearly to the extent that I'm so sorry, sickness of the thickness. That sounds like that Jesus camp kind of crap that you hear about in myth.
Mm-hmm. I did those too.
Oof. Have you ever, Alex? Have you seen?
Have you all watched that? Oh my gosh.
Have you ever seen the movie called The Mosquito Coast?
Yes.
I've heard of it, but I've never actually watched it.
1980s Harrison Ford.
Yeah, you should. I'm not saying you should. You can or you cannot. But I would be interested to hear your perspective on that movie. It is about missionaries who go to South America and bring their kids, and they live a very interesting lifestyle. Your story kind of reminds me
of missionaries.
Pardon?
I can already tell you my opinion on missionaries, especially white missionaries going into non-white places.
You know, the story that you told just a few moments ago, Caleb, you were talking about was it your mother or your stepmother?
My stepmother, yes.
Your stepmother, okay. And you were saying that she had to go to therapy because of her daughter. what that reminded me, I know I'm relating everything back to pop culture, but there's a TV show called Love, Victor. That's a spinoff of Love, Simon. Have you seen it?
Yes, I've also read the book Love Simon and seen the movie Love Simon. I love that
Yeah.
series so much.
In the show, there's a character, Victor, the main character. His mom struggles with his sexual identity, and she's religious. She's Catholic, and it's their Catholic Latino family, and he's gay, and she ends up doing like therapy because of her son. And I'm like, it's such a, I guess initially it sounds like a strange thing, like the person who's gay and who might need therapy from the abuse and the trauma that's being inflicted on them is Victor. But it's interesting that the mother, it's a struggle for her to accept her kid who's gay.
Well, she wasn't faking it. This is to her core. This is the woman that she was. She's
right.
100% a hardcore evangelist, whatever she was at the time, kind of Christian, and being gay was not the way. 110%. It was the opposite thing you should be doing. And so when it was, there's a lot of conflict going on because she still clearly loved her. She says, I love my daughter. I want a relationship with my daughter. But I can't endorse, I can't encourage, I can't pretend that this is so. And then she also had this burning thought that she was literally going to burn in hell because of this, and that really messed with her as well. So there's a lot of it. Obviously, I'm not going to say that some of this she didn't have coming, but I also I kind of have to say at the end of the day that I think it's unreasonable to expect her to, just because she suddenly realized that her daughter was gay, to just suddenly be able to turn off her internal heuristics on a dime. Like, she has to reprogram. I still have a lot of heuristics that from my indoctrination that's like admittedly I am very, very uncomfortable around again, I don't know the proper terminology, but flamboyantly gay men and trans people that, or not trans, excuse me. Maybe that's correct. The cross dressers.
Drag queens.
Drag queens. Thank
Drag
you.
queen.
I'm sorry.
Okay. You think that comes from religion? Your religious indoctrination?
I do, because I have no. Well, I think so. That's just my hunch, is that's because that was the way I was programmed. There's certain tiers of awfulness. There's
Would
gay,
your father
then there's extra
be...
gay, and then there's super duper gay, and then there's holy crap. Now, I'm sorry.
Did your stepfather? I think he was the religious person you were raised with, right? Your stepfather?
Yes.
Or was he like that as well?
Oh yes, yes. In fact, I would say he was primarily the reason for that within me, because I didn't talk to my stepmom or my mom about sex stuff. It was mostly my stepdad Jack. And
so does that knowledge you have about yourself, does that make it difficult for you in conversations with the LGBTQ plus community? Do you feel like you have to walk on eggshells sometimes, or? Mm-hmm. So it seems like the religious. It seems like despite being the cisgender heterosexual guy who's deconverted, the religious influence on you. Religion had a negative influence on you as well, a different kind of trauma.
And I recognize it because as Damien was saying earlier, I fully encourage the communities to flourish and prosper, and I hope and I encourage it, and I want them to, and I'll do everything in my power to make sure that they're safe and happy.
Let's have.
I just have this reaction when I'm in the room with them. Like, so there's a club downtown here where I'm at that's all this. They have shows on the weekends, and I was invited to one, and I was like, you know what? Why not? Let's give it a try. I was just trying to break outside of my comfort zone, get outside of the box. I honestly could not shake I hate to sound mean, but I felt creeped out, admittedly, and I just couldn't shake it. Even though I
want to get
Dr.
Dr. Ray in here to elaborate on this, because I feel like you can probably say something to this as our resident psychology expert.
Well, I really wanted to say something because Caleb, okay, and Courageous, and Alex, all three of you have told stories that illustrate what I'm about ready to say. And that is, I don't hear this being talked about too often. You guys hear me okay?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. I don't hear this talked about too often, but I think it's an important component to understand what's going through. Why are you experiencing that when you go to a drag show? Not, I mean, there's obviously lots of people there, they're enjoying themselves, but why are you particularly, or why are you afraid of cockroaches so bad? But so there's lots of things going on when a child is growing up, and the brain is going through developmental stages, and each of these stages has, let's just call them windows of time that open up. For example, there's a window of time that opens up where you can learn language. You could learn any language on the planet from, say, age 0 to 8 years old. And starting somewhere around 12 years old, that window closes and you can't learn, or it's very difficult to learn languages after that. And even if you learn it, you may always have an accent. So I use that as an example of something that was discovered back in the late 40s, early 50s, and that's the notion of imprinting. What a group of ethologists, Dr. Tinbergen, I believe, was the one that German ethologist discovered, was if you hatch baby geese, and the human standing there with no mother around, but the human standing there, when the geese hatch, the human walks away, the geese will follow the human. If you walk around for several hours, those little baby geese will, what we now know or call imprint on the human. Bring the mother back in, and the mother, no matter what you try to do, they will never follow the mother. Because nature has a way of imprinting certain things. It's biologically, it's very efficient to say, well, whatever's moving is probably my mom. So you don't have to have this fancy genetic program to figure out who your mother is. Humans are the same way. Think about this. 3-month-old children can tell the difference between a male and a female face fairly easily. 6-month-old child has long since been able to recognize its mother's face as opposed to any other woman's face. And no baby mistakes a dog's face for their mother's face. Because we've got windows, we've got programming in our brain that says dogs' faces are not what you're looking for. Human faces are. Human female faces, and your human mother female face is the most important face. So I'd say all that because all these windows are opening up throughout this time period in your brain. One of those important windows is your sexuality. And there's a point in time in which things are being imprinted on you. For example, at 5 or 6 years old, you may be being imprinted certain sexual characteristics on your brain that will make you attracted to that characteristic the rest of your life. There's quite a bit of evidence in other animals, other mammals, that we can actually change or control or influence what a mammal will respond to sexually by early childhood training. And there's a lot of evidence the same thing happens with human children too. So I go back to KW. You were affected by this, whatever this was. I'm guessing you had some very deep programming during that window of sexual programming that made you very uncomfortable. And I'm not saying you can't overcome it, but it will take some time and work. Because
it's good that you recognize it. Like, you shouldn't feel shame for recognizing something, right. Being honest and recognizing this about you. I know the desire you have probably to tiptoe around the issue because you don't want to offend other people. But the best way to not offend them is by being open and honest with who you actually are. And, you don't want to go to a drag show. I'm not comfortable with that,
And drag shows,
honestly, I thought like I said, I went fully expecting to just say screw it and have a good time because I've never really been exposed to drag shows or anything like that. I'd seen handfuls of it here and there, so to be fully engrossed in it, I thought would be just a different fun experience, and it was entertaining by the by. Don't get me wrong. It's just like I said, it's like. There's just this. I wanted to be there. I can't describe that. I also had this part of me that just also wanted to leave the room.
This is purely anecdotal, so don't take this as the gospel, whatever that is. But watching RuPaul's Drag Race may cure you of that over time.
Actually, that I would prescribe that as well as a queer person who also grew up in an extremely homophobic, trans. drag was the devil type environment. RuPaul's Drag Race, I will say fuck RuPaul. He can go.
Yeah, forget RuPaul himself.
RuPaul himself is problematic. However, the drag queens and kings that come onto there, like, even if you're not a fan of like their personality, or if their personality makes you uncomfortable, think of it as looking at artwork. Yes. Because that's essentially what drag is. It is a performance art. Someone being very flamboyant in drag may not be how they are in real life. For me, I took a lot of inspiration for the way I do my makeup from RuPaul's Drag Race. That is what got me into makeup. And so for me now, when I put on makeup, it is essentially me putting on a mask. It is me becoming more performative.
It's acting. It's being someone else. Right?
It is me being someone else, not who I really am. Yeah. Well, kind of, it's a part of who I really am, but it's a part that I've separated from non-makeup Alex.
You know, we do have a question for you, Alex, from the chat. It's from one of our producers and recruiters here. Aaron wants to know, was your former church related to John Wimber and the Vineyard movement?
So I did recognize the name. So Goat Nations rebranded a few years ago to Goat Nations. Their original name was Calvary International.
Good instincts, Aaron.
John Wimber and the Vineyard movement, I don't know how directly connected to them it was. However, I most definitely recognize the name. I recognize the face that came with the name when I did a quick Google search on that. And I was just like, this is 100% very familiar. And the fact that you say Calvary, I was just like, there is no way that's a coincidence.
Hey, Damien, does that ring any bells?
Is the shirt.
Did they also produce like a lot of songs, like write a lot of songs and produce a lot of music as well?
The Calvary International /
the Vineyard.
I think so. I think they did. Yeah.
Because
Vineyard music is a very specific type of worship music.
Yes, that is also like two verses and it repeats all the same kind of So
a lot of the Christian music
over and over and over again until
it's almost like God hates choruses.
Well, we know
this is
now
the church
how
I grew up in. I grew up in a Vineyard church. They're called the Association of Vineyard Churches. It's not an official denomination. Literally, I have. So even though I'm not a Christian anymore, one of my favorite quotes is from John Wimber, which says, "Love is a 4-letter word. I spell it R-I-S-K."
There's okay.
That's very.
You know what?
Prescient.
We know that this movement has how pervasive it is. If it's reached all the way down to Australia, I mean, if Damien knows about it, that means it's everywhere because that's like on the other side of the world.
Yeah,
other side of the fucking world.
Like the way that Vineyard does their music, essentially it's emotional manipulation at its finest. It uses certain chords, it uses certain progressions, repetitive verses, that kind of thing, to make you feel like, oh my gosh, there's the Holy Spirit in the room. Yep. I can feel him near me. You get goosebumps, you get shivers, and it is.
I'm just looking at the comment from Aaron in the last one where it says like Vineyard music and Maranatha music. Maranatha. There's a lot of songs that we sung that were from Vineyard or Maranatha or CCM or
You saying that in church, Damien?
Yeah. Sorry.
You saying that when you were in church?
Well, a lot of the songs that we sung were either Hillsong. And obviously they're very prolific songwriters, or so basically Hillsong was like post 1990s and afterwards, but anything that was written before 1990s was generally Maranatha, Vineyard, along that, Don Moen, just trying to think who else, there's 45 million.
So you three have a lot more in common than I thought when we started the show.
Well,
because you all know something about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if any of you follow Eva's Framed on TikTok or Instagram, she actually went to the Bethel Supernatural Ministry of Music, or School of Music or something. I don't remember what their BS name is called, but she'll talk about how like they are trained and they teach you how to essentially how to create that experience. And she says they basically will spend 3 minutes spiritually edging someone to get to where they want them to be.
Oh. If you make the music louder, more emotionally intense,
and you're like, really bring them up to that spot, and then you'll bring them back down because you gotta like.
And then for me, like, I don't have that kind of experience. However, I did study sociology in high school for fun. I took a couple of college courses in high school for fun.
I was gonna say that's a college course.
Yeah, so I had a lot of time on my hand, and was really good at school, so I took college courses because, why not? I didn't want to be in standard classes. Anyway, I did sociology for fun because I figured, hey, this would be cool. And then that led into a little bit of psychology as well. And then I also have my years of experience church hopping. And like I was in a worship. I helped out with like the worship in one church for a little bit. It wasn't too long. And it's insane the amount of just manipulation that goes into it. And I wonder how many worship leaders, people who are in worship, feel just horribly guilty about what they're doing.
Well, I want to ask you, we only have 10 minutes left, but I do want to ask you a little bit about this Satanism thing, because one of the things I grew up knowing / learning, hearing about Satanism from the Christian church was that they use this demonic music, and like anytime you hear rock music or heavy metal, like that's the devil's music. That's what I was taught growing up. So what is Satanism, and what is the modern Satanist movement about?
Okay,
and do they use musical manipulation the way Christians do?
So modern Satanism would be Leviathan Satanism. I found out about it through Baphomet on TikTok. He's also part of the Burning Eden podcast. I had joined like 2 years ago because I thought it was interesting. I agreed with it. It aligned with what I believed personally.
You'd identify as a Satanist today?
Yeah, independent Satanist is what I would be. Just
and what does that mean?
It means that I don't fucking like any of the satanic organizations that they have around right now. I love the readings from the Satanic Church. However, Anton LaVey was a piece of shit. I like some of the teachings from the Satanic Temple. However, the Satanic Temple is very performative in their actions, and I'm not a fan of that.
What are some of the beliefs or the doctrines that you agree with, that you hold?
Some of it is consent is a big part of Satanism, and the Satanic Church, like the 11 Satanic Rules of the Earth or something like that. Hold on, let me pull it up real quick so I can read it word for word.
Alex, 3 words: zeal and ardor.
Hey, Bryce, before we move on, let me just say one thing. If you go to my book, Sex and God, you will find a whole chapter on hypnosis in evangelical ceremonies. I'm sorry.
We have an image of it right here, and that's a pretty good image you've got there.
I did not mean that. I mean, it's the God virus. That's where I talk about hypnosis in evangelical sermons and how they program the music to do exactly what they want to do to you emotionally. So
wow,
I had
never heard of.
There's a whole psychology of organizing a church service to get the maximum emotional effect, donations, and people getting baptized or whatever. Anyway, it's on my book, The God Virus. Yep.
The churches I remember going to when I was a kid, I went to a lot of, some of them were Baptist churches, some of them were, Pentecostal, a lot of them were Black churches, gospel churches, and music is part of the church experience. And that was the only fun part of it. But, it was very different. One of the things that I think attracted so many people to it is because it's like kind of spiritually moving music. It was very different from the kind of music you hear like in Catholic church, for example, that's very somber and scary and,
horror vibes.
It's designed to put you in an altered state of consciousness, which makes you feel good and makes you come back and give more money.
Right. Okay, go ahead, Alex.
So you asked about music and Satanism. Listen to whatever the fuck you want. We don't give a shit. Is essentially the whole vibe they got. It's follow these rules to your best of your ability and live your life. We It's very hands-off, and not self-induced, like
Self-determined.
You are in
determined,
control
pretty
of your
much.
own destiny type situation.
Essentially, yeah. So one of my favorite rules from the Satanic Rules of the Earth is rule number 5. Don't make any sexual advances unless you are given the mating signal. Consent is directly in Satanism, and that was a big thing for me. Another one is the first rule: do not give your opinions or advice unless you are asked. I feel like a lot of Christians could benefit from this, especially the Christians who are in my comment sections. You guys can fuck right off, because I get hundreds of them, and it's so annoying. Another one is when in another's home, show them respect, or else do not go there, which is another thing that I take personally to heart, just because I apply that rule to anything that you own that is open to another person conditionally, which is like anyone's home, anyone's social media page, etc. If you're not going to respect the person whose page you are on, you have no business being there. Fuck right off. Just go away. Leave them alone. Your opinion's not
I do
wanted.
that
It's not
too
needed.
because, like, I don't, so like I have friends on Facebook where I really disagree with some of the things that they will say, and I don't like. I'll either just unfollow so I don't have to see it, or I just keep scrolling. And so, I only interact with the people who come onto my page, or like for my TikToks, I will interact with people who are already, either interacting on my page or other atheist page. It's not like I go watch Christian stuff and like try to antagonize them.
Exactly. So on my TikTok page, you will rarely see me stitch a Christian unless I'm being respectful. You will, or unless they're specifically addressing Satanists or atheists, I will very rarely stitch them. I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say, don't do this to me, if I'm going to do the same thing right back to them. I don't feel like that's right, and it's not something I'm a fan of.
Let me ask, in the couple of minutes we have left, let me ask Damien here. You are the tall, friendly atheist dad.
Indeed.
How many kids do you have?
2.
2. And
Yes.
Remind me of their ages?
16 and 13.
Okay, so they are of an age now where they are kind of independent-minded and
My daughter already has a boyfriend.
Pardon?
My daughter already has a boyfriend.
Oh, how do you feel about that? How does that make you feel?
A little bit. My advice to her is don't take it too seriously. I think only about 2% of high school romances last, and I've said to her, like, don't take it too seriously, don't get too committed. Just take it easy, take it casually, that kind of stuff. Because
I married my high school sweetheart.
Okay, and I hope you're one of the 2% that works out.
Me
Yeah.
too, but we're also realistic, so.
Yeah, that's So yeah, no. That's,
So how do you? Does it make you uncomfortable at all? The thought of, I mean, I don't have kids, but I assume, and just based on what I know from everyone I know who has kids, does it make you uncomfortable the thought of them possibly ending up in one of these sexual relationships?
yes,
And
yes, it does. Yes, it does.
okay, what kind of advice do you, as a former Christian, now atheist, but one who has kids and trying to protect them, how do you explain about that?
Explain about what exactly?
Your feelings and your preferences
Okay.
about what they do or don't do.
I would say don't get pregnant and don't get a disease.
Okay, so basically what Caleb said
Yeah.
earlier was his instruction.
So that was his. Mine was fire and brimstone, but here's a condom.
Okay.
It was kind of a like, don't have sex, but we know you're gonna have sex kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Get birth control while you're still able to. If you must, be safe. And if you really must, use a fucking condom along with the birth control, please.
And I would also say to any parents, this doesn't seem like your situation, but who knows? Parents of LGBTQ plus children who may have come out, who may not have come out, if you suspect, don't do the religious thing on them. you know, because you're just going to cause a lot more pain and suffering, not just to them, but probably to yourself as well.
Oh, I got a quick
And
question for anyone.
yeah, go ahead.
For all of us who grew up Christian, did y'all get extremely uncomfortable with the birds and bees talk?
You know, I never had one. It was just sort of, I don't know if my mom was, I grew up with my mom. My dad wasn't in the picture when I was growing up, but I don't know if my mom just assumed that I was progressive enough to sort of pick that up on my own or what. But I never actually, you know, it's when you're a boy and you just have a mom, it's not exactly a conversation you're looking to get into, you know?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'll let Caleb, Damien, Gray, I'll let you guys answer that.
I got the literal birds and the bees talk from both my mom and my dad. But I think I got it way too young. I think they tried hitting me with that. It was the literal birds and bees, but I was like 9 or 10.
See, I don't know what is the literal. I knew that as an expression for talking about sex, but what did they tell you?
There's actually a book. At least that's how I was introduced to it.
Same book.
Yeah.
Same thing you said?
I was introduced to it with the book after I spent many, many, many years avoiding the conversation in school.
Mm-hmm.
Like any health class, I would somehow get a note to be like, peace out. I'm going
Why
to
do you
someone
think
else.
that was?
Part of it was sex really bothered me for a really long time. Any talk about it. I was introduced to it very young because of my siblings. They are who introduced me to pornography. And that was not something I needed to see when I was young. And so like it always just made me feel and then sexual advances from my sister, which also made me feel so I just avoided it for years.
It was nothing you were interested in?
No, not whatsoever.
Okay.
The only time I was interested in it was when my husband, when I finally met him, and that was like a year into dating him.
Well, I'm glad that it worked out for you in the positive. I guess I'll just ask Damien really quick. The approach.
You had that kind of attraction to anyone else? Sorry if that's too personal, but
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with it now. It was just like getting up to that point.
No, she was asking if you had ever had that with someone other than your husband. Any interest or attraction?
Any kind of like sexual attraction with someone else. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
So I'll just ask Damien really quick. The approach that you take with your children, is that the same approach that was taken with you growing up?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Oh,
did you ever have the birds and the bees talk that you remember?
Oh god, it was back in the Stone Age. It was that long ago. Yeah, no, I think there was like a. I think the problem with being in the 80s was that this whole kind of being open with your kids about that kind of stuff, just wasn't really done. It was like a softly, you know. Don't mention the word penis, or you know, it's all very, you know, in very hushed tones. And I was going to say one of the just to tie back to a point that Caleb made. One of the other problems about growing up in the 80s was that like gender non-conforming people were seen as, you know, dirty, evil, twisted, sick in their head. And I do have some of the same hang-ups that Caleb does about drag queens because I was raised in that environment. And it's like, well, hold on, yeah, it's and so that's what growing up in regressive times, as well as being in a fundamentalist in a church group, does to you. In that it kind of it indoctrinates you. I think what the word that Dr. Ray said was imprint.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you got out of it to change that cycle, so that your children will no longer have to experience life and the idea of sexuality that way.
And
Dr. Ray,
respect people for who they are.
Yeah, Dr. Ray, what final advice would you give maybe to parents as far as parents that are either religious or have come out of religion about how to talk to their kids about sex?
We could do a whole. I have actually done a whole show just on that subject, so I'm not sure I could give you everything. I'll just say,
No, we don't.
You begin teaching your children how to drive very early, long before they get a driver's license. You're in the car and you're probably teaching and telling and using examples. Why aren't we doing that with sex and sexuality? We could be doing that. So, treat it it's serious. Learning how to drive is a serious thing. You can get yourself killed. So takes teaching your children how to drive seriously, but it's something you would do normal and natural. You wouldn't get all upset about it or emotional. Same thing for sex.
Yeah. Consider honestly the harmful attitudes you bring, your religious baggage and your religious indoctrination and ideology. Consider the harmful effects that has on children, gay, straight, bi, any kind of queer, identifying people, and consider whether or not that's the best way to raise them on that particular issue. Even if you're still religious, we still get religious people in here. Obviously, we saw one earlier. And so that would be my advice. Read Dr. Ray's books. Do me a favor, hold up that book again one more time, Dr. Ray.
Well, Sex and God is the one you put up there, but I've also got the God virus, Sex and God, and the God virus.
Read them, read them all. And also, we have links to Dr. Ray's, if you're interested in, if you've come out of religion recently and you're trying to figure out your place, recoveringfromreligion.org. We have that in the description below. And, I also, Damien, you are the tall, friendly atheist dad. What do you've got coming up on your podcast? Are you active right now?
This Sunday, I have an announcement that I am God. That's
wow.
I mean, right.
Well, praise
yes,
the Lord.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No. There's a reason.
How many
for
fingers
it,
am I holding up right now? No,
14. That's these are fingers you don't see. No. The reason I made it was because I want to tackle the argument from authority. So I make the case that I am God. If I tell you I am God, then why don't you treat my words the same as the God in the Bible? Like, why should I accept if you don't accept my argument from authority, why should I accept yours? So I go into a spiel about, that I am God, and how dare you disobey me, and there's a certain place I make for people like you who don't acknowledge that I am God.
I'm just saying, hear me out. You could become a Satanist where we're our own gods. That is a Satanist.
Well, it sounds like he already did.
I think you just came out as a Satanist. Congratulations.
There you go. Thank you. So that's coming up dropping this Sunday morning, and I also do have a YouTube channel where I read books from various apologists, and I sometimes break out in uncontrollable laughter, especially when it's Ray Comfort.
That sounds like fun. I'm definitely going to have to check that out. So,
Good.
Tall, friendly atheist dad, also link in the description below. Sickness of the Thickness, aka Alex. Tell us about your TikToking.
So my TikToking is typically it's where people come to rage, essentially. Okay. I highlight the absolute best in Christianity, and I just make stupid TikToks to trending sounds, just having the comment right there beautifully for everyone to see. And so a lot of people, I have gotten a lot of people banned because their comments are not so Christian. And people really just...
like, I remember one of them told Heathen Queen that they're praying that God gives her cervical cancer.
These are religious people?
These are religious people praying.
A lot of death threats from TikTok.
There's no hate like Christian love.
Great statement. I love that.
I've gotten a lot of racists from TikTok saying that I'm going to hell because I'm black. So Mormonism, guys. I've gotten transphobes who really like trying to guess what's in my pants. Like, it's kind of funny at this point because I'm just like, you're against sexual immorality.
But that's all they think about.
Are all about biology. However, why are you thinking what's underneath my clothes when it's none of your business?
Yeah.
And in addition to that, where's your biological proof that I am one sex or the other, or what if I'm intersex? Where is your biological proof? And then I do a gotcha moment where I'm just like, you're basing this solely off the fact that I'm wearing makeup and I'm feminine. You have literally no biological proof.
I don't care about those things anymore. I think I did back in the day, but now, like, unless it's somebody I'm planning on hooking up with, I really don't
Exactly.
give a shit. And even
Exactly.
then, like I said, I go both
Even
ways,
then,
so
it's only relevant because of like the technicality.
Cray, I appreciate your input and your recent contributions to Skeptic Haven in general, but to this show, Secular Soapbox specifically.
Oh, thank you.
What your schedule is quite busy these days. You are in multiple roles. What all are you doing? What are the different hats that you wear?
So I have a TikTok as well. My username is Courageous. I actually changed it from Karayah to Courageous because of Dave Warnock. And I'm also going to starting to, he had this TikTok that was talking about how if you deconstruct from your faith that you're courageous. He used some colorful language I won't use here, but he was like, "You're courageous," and I was like, "You know what? I am courageous." So,
You own it.
Good
Own
for
it.
you. That's great. I love it.
so I have a TikTok, and then I also am on Twitter. I blast a bunch of stuff all the time. A lot of memes. And then also I am a producer, so I help produce here. I also help with booking, and I am a guest or a host sometimes. And then I'm also a producer for The Unholy Trinity with Heathen Queen, Jagazis, and Red Sage. I'm actually working on an editing an interview with Rabbi Hana about sexuality in Judaism and the stigmatisms and like the mindsets that Christians have versus what is acceptable in Jewish culture, because they're very different. And then I'm also the producer. Yeah, and then I'm the producer for Heathen Queen, so I'm working on an episode for her, and I'm going to start producing for Dave Warnock and Genevieve's show, That GD Show. So,
how many hours do you have in your day?
I just don't sleep. All right.
We certainly appreciate everything you do here. Caleb, final thoughts. Do you feel a little bit more comfortable after the discussion, comfortable in your own skin? I know religion has harmed you just as much as it's harmed the rest of us, just in a different way. How did this discussion go for you?
Honestly, like I said, I think it's just a lot of it's just sort of ingrained in my DNA, and I recognize it, so I can learn. I've already know that, and I've known this for years, that whatever this is, this uncomfortable feeling that I have, is dumb, and so I can act accordingly. Like, I didn't bolt out of that place, nor have I ever bolted away from anybody in any situation like that, or done anything I think to make it really obvious that I'm very uncomfortable. I think I can, quote, play it off, if you will. Honestly, I've been doing a lot of retrospective thinking here, and I think a lot of it for me was that there was the home was very binary. It was man, woman, and the duties therein, and gay was it was like the anti-man, and the less manly, the less worth you had as a, quote, man, and since I'm a man.
But you're okay with gay people now. It's
absolutely.
But
I'm telling you, it was rage moments. Like there was a comedian that was on TV that was a drag comedian, and I was just watching this, laughing my ass off, and Jack come walking into the room, turn around the corner, he's like, what the fuck is that? And he just went on this rage that I was just watching this comedian. It was just stand-up comedy. He wasn't talking about anything sexual or anything. He just walked in, saw what I was watching, and that was it. That was all it took for this to become a big episode. And it was just shit like that I think really helped didn't help, but it shaped who I am, unfortunately.
Hopefully it's conversations like this that will do the helping. So
And also would still recommend you watching RuPaul's Drag Race. It's just a really good show.
Do a
and
couple
it's
of
like
episodes
a good
on
entry into it.
Yeah. So that's all we have, folks. I thought this was a great discussion. I would like to give thanks to all of the panel for showing up and giving me your unique perspectives and from your unique backgrounds. We have links to everybody's.
I'll bill you for my time later.
So I would also like to thank everyone in the chat as well. And Damien, I'm definitely stealing that quote. There is no hate like Christian love.
I think I actually stole it from Telltale Atheist, so you can on-credit him.
Public domain. Awesome. That's even
Oh yeah,
better.
it's 100% public domain. I stole it from God knows where.
The other one I'll do is there's no hate like Christian hate. Just like it's not love, so I'm not calling it love.
Fair enough. Well, on that note, I'm glad you guys were able to join us. I appreciate everyone in the chat. If you have not liked the video by now, what's wrong with you? Just hit that like button and absolutely subscribe to Secular Haven. We've got a bunch of great content for you. I would like to thank all of my producers, Wes, Kat, Phil, Aaron, Shane, Cray. Secular Soapbox. We're on Wednesdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we will see you guys next time. Thank you for watching Secular Haven. See you in the future.
Losing time, I'm fading fast. I just wanna make it last. Try to let go of the past. I close my eyes, embrace the blast. Sleepless nights and headaches stack. Restlessness to hell and back. What's my purpose? What do I grab? A slippery surface, a heart attack. And sometimes you just gotta believe there's something that'll give you relief. There's something that'll have what you need. What you need. We're broken, it's tragic. We're not all elastic, but maybe there's magic. Believe you could have it. And I know of sadness, the anxious and panic, the infinite vastness of all that is blackness.